do the sensible thing and flee, Tommy's large white face peeked out from a gap in his black velvet curtains. "Well, hello, stranger," he said. I was quiet for a moment. "Hey," I said. Tommy stepped out from behind the curtains. "You can see there have been some changes in apartment. This is now my private corner. No one is allowed back here, unless they have special access." I was more than fine with Tommy's private black curtain refuge. It was a little Addams Family maybe, but at least it meant I still had my own space. I'd been back in the apartment for only a few minutes when Tommy started asking me for my agent's contact info and the name of the headshot photographer I'd used. An image of him crashing into Iris Burton's office and her driving a wooden stake into his heart popped into my mind. I saw that he'd prepared a stack of envelopes pre-labeled with casting directors' addresses. I'd been in the same room as Tommy for 5 minutes, and already I felt suffocated. He announced that if I decided to continue living in the apartment, my rent would be upped. Instead of paying Tommy less than 1/4 of the mortgage a month, Tommy's story was inconsistent as to whether he owned or rented the place. I was now to pay him half. "You need to learn responsibility," he said. "The school is over." This too was fine, since I didn't want to keep living my life in indentured servitude to Tommy. But it meant my already diminished savings were going to run out more quickly than I'd anticipated. I promised myself I would spend the next morning looking for part-time jobs and a new place. Already I could feel that the apartment's old, beloved energy had become warped by Tommy's presence. Tommy may or may not be a vampire, but I can say with surety that, at least in close quarters, he's eminently capable of draining the life and light right out of someone. While I was unpacking my stuff in my bedroom, Tommy stood at the door jamb. "You look so skinny and pale, my God," he said. "What happened to you? Are you ghost?" "I had the flu for 2 weeks," I said, "like I told you." "How much weight did you lose?"
You win.
10 pounds. Tommy's hands went to his stomach. "Well, you're lucky. Maybe I should get sick too, huh?" "I'm tired," I told Tommy, hoping to convey that it was time for him to head back to his vampire wonder cave. "I'm gonna try to get some sleep." Tommy nodded, and I closed the door. Tommy stays up very late. I knew that at the time. When you don't live with someone, Tommy stays up very late is a curiosity, a personality quirk, an abstraction. When you live with someone, however, Tommy stays up very late swiftly defines the living dynamic. On that first night, Tommy spent an hour on the phone working on his diction with his friend Chloe. He could be heard repeating the phrases she was apparently feeding him. "Yes, I think so. Where's the nearest telephone? I don't agree with you." All in his valiant, ongoing attempt to lose that ineradicable accent of his. The apartment was too small for me not to hear every exchange. "How is my voice tonight?" Tommy would ask Chloe after 10 or 12 attempts. "Less accent?" I assumed Chloe's judgment was usually not affirmative, because Tommy would begin the process anew. After Chloe had had enough and hung up, or killed herself, Tommy busted out some English audio tape course he'd purchased. I listened to the rough chalk of Tommy pressing the play button. Then, "You think it's good, do you?" Tommy would repeat that. "You think it's good, do you?" Then another chalk, this time of the rewind button being pressed, followed by a whirring sound, and there the phrase was again. "You think it's good, do you?"
You think it's good,
Tommy
do
would
you?
repeat it, his intonation so hopelessly wrong. Tommy played and repeated the phrase, "You think it's good, do you?" for over an hour. He did it at least 80 times. I know because that's when I stopped counting and put my pillow over my head. You think it's good, do you? This wasn't even a phrase the average native English speaker would say. Tommy should have been learning to say, I'd like a refund for these tapes, please. I was fast asleep when my door opened and Tommy began doing pull-ups on the bar he'd installed in my doorway, which I'd somehow not noticed. It was 4 a.m. After a grunty set of 10 pull-ups, Tommy dropped to the floor with a thud and turned to pace around the living room like a caveman, after which he hit the chin-up bar again. Once he completed 4 sets, he closed the door. This is a nightmare, I thought. Either that, or Tommy was trying to convince me to leave. In the morning, I hit every service industry and retail establishment I found on Sunset, Hollywood, and Santa Monica Boulevards. I probably filled out a few dozen applications that day. Near the end of my quest, I found myself in a gay bar that wasn't due to open for a few hours. This wasn't the kind of bar in which hipsters drank elegant potions and talked about the film industry. This was a slightly feral bar with an older clientele and dungeon-like decor. I wanted to see if you guys are hiring, I asked the manager. Well, they needed a bar back, which is the person who carries kegs and boxes of booze around and, per the manager, also occasionally clean the toilets. I can do that, I said desperately. The man's eyes filled with strangely friendly pity. I'm really sorry, he said, but you wouldn't last one night in this place. At the end of the day, I walked 4 miles to drop off an application to work at a grocery store. I was told that the store didn't have any positions open at the moment, but that they'd keep my stuff on file. I'd never felt so defeated in my life. I spent the next few days walking around Los Angeles, hoping that while I was out, my home phone was ringing with prospects. Alas, it wasn't. I did manage to do some constructive things, one of which was load up on literature at the Samuel French bookshop on Sunset. Then I signed up for 2 courses at Santa Monica College, the history of film and the history of theater. I'd resisted college for so long, and been such an indifferent student in high school. I was a little stunned by how much I wound up loving both classes. I could thank Tommy, at least, for inadvertently making school an enjoyable endeavor. I've spent a lot of time wishing I were more of a partier or a reveler, anything to break up the nights back in the Vampire Wonder Cave, but I wasn't. So while Tommy spent his evenings and nights, and very late nights, trying to lose his accent, I mostly read books with my door closed and my headphones on. One name I came across in several acting books was Jeff Corey, a character actor who'd been very successful in the 1940s. He was summoned to testify before the House Committee on Un-American Activities, a committee ridiculed during his testimony. Following his blacklisting, Corey became a highly sought-after acting teacher. He'd worked with Gary Cooper, James Dean, Jack Nicholson, Sharon Tate, Leonard Nimoy, Jane Fonda, and more recently, Shannon Doherty. Corey still ran a weekly acting class out in Malibu, so I made an appointment with him to see whether I could get in. The day of our meeting, my Lumina didn't start, and the bus to Malibu was as grueling as a Trans-Siberian train.
Round 4.
Tommy offered to drive me to the coast, which typically took an hour. I didn't say anything about Corey or what I was doing in Malibu, for fear that he'd run into the house with an armful of headshots. We found Corey's house on the Malibu cliffs, which overlooked Point Doom Beach, and I suggested to Tommy that, while he waited, he should take a swim or something. I don't go in ocean, Tommy said. I tried to convince him that ocean water was actually very good for the body. Anything, basically, to keep him from curiously popping in on Corey's and my meeting. Are you kidding? Tommy said. Ocean's not good for you. There are monsters that bite your ass. Tommy parked across the street and left me with these parting words as I started towards Corey's house. Be careful. The gigolo business doesn't work how you think. Corey took me to his guest house, where he held his classes, and which had a panoramic view of the Pacific as beautiful as any I'd seen. Corey himself was irritable and cranky in the way that only old men can pull off and make adorable. I sensed that Corey no longer had that many eager young visitors, but the man still loved to talk. The first thing he told me was that Bob Dylan lived across the street from him. I immediately thought Tommy Wiseau was blocking Bob Dylan's driveway. The second was that Elia Kazan, who had been one of my favorite directors, was a shitty tennis player and an even worse loser. He told me tales about when he'd done In Cold Blood and Rod Serling's Night Gallery, and described working with James Dean on his walk the week before Dean was killed. I could take in Corey's charactery face, all white hair and big unkempt eyebrows, and listen to his anecdotes for hours. I remember thinking that if someone were to play Jeff Corey in a film, the only two people who could have pulled it off were Burgess Meredith and Jeff Corey. After we talked for a while, Corey asked me to do a monologue. I did, and it came out sideways. I was, I admit, greatly intimidated by his direction. Sit with your legs closer together. Come on, young man. Stand up and take command. My monologue was rough, but Corey had mercy and invited me to take part in his class. The next morning, for the first time since I'd come back to LA, Tommy's curtains were slightly open, allowing me the chance to peer into his lair. It was as weird as I... For a bed, Tommy had placed a regular twin mattress over a half-inflated air mattress. which meant he was sleeping at a tilty 30-degree incline every night. For pillowcases, Tommy was using old t-shirts. He noticed me pondering these Wazovian masterpieces of squalid home decor. "How do you like my new creation?" he asked, as he held up one of the pillows. "This is my new thing." Scattered across Tommy's glass-top desk were papers, his How to Lose Your Accent tapes, the tape recorder he'd later use in the room, exercise books, and yoga videos. His clothes were thrown everywhere. Half-empty glasses of water were sitting on the floor, some cloudier than others. Taped to the wall was a piece of paper, scrawled across which was one of Tommy's more mysterious mantras. I, me, you, voice, body, mind. We all have that. That night, I started writing a screenplay about a young guy who lived with a lunatic in a house that had been built on a haunted Indian burial ground. I wasn't expecting to sell the thing. It was pure therapy. A few nights later, January 23rd, 2000, was the Golden Globes, known to Tommy as the Golden Globe. I was driving home from school, fighting my way through the limo traffic, and wishing desperately that I were flowing with it instead. When I walked into the apartment, Tommy was hanging upside down from the bedroom's door jamb and pull-up bar like a bat. He was wearing his tank top and baggy sweats, multiple bleach stains. His eyes were closed. Being greeted by this vision of Tommy nearly made me sit down on the kitchen floor and quietly weep.
Fight.
The man back spoke. "Take your shoes off. I get sick because of all these bacteria, damn it." "Bacteria?" I said. "Are you serious?" "Yes, I am serious. I get sick because of all these bacteria sneezing like hell." This was when I noticed that Tommy was wearing white surgical gloves. So it was official. Tommy had gone Howard Hughes nuts. "From now on," he went on, "you must wash the hands immediately. Leave your shoes outside. Don't touch my things. I'm sensitive to all this stuff. Have respect." Then Tommy curled up, grabbed the pull-up bar, released his legs, hung on for a moment, and finally dropped to the floor. "I'm starving," he said, wobbling a little as the gathered blood rushed from his brain. "Let's eat something." Tommy couldn't bear to eat alone. He would suffer through hours of hunger pain spasms to avoid the solitude. But I liked, even preferred, to eat alone. Sitting by myself at the end of the day was a way for me to think and reflect. Since I'd started living with Tommy, it had also become a useful time to plot. "I'm not going out tonight," I said. "It's crazy traffic everywhere because of the Golden Globes." Tommy shrugged. "Golden Globes? So what? I'm not invited. Who cares? Let's go eat, go see feature movie, something different. Find some chicks or something. I'm bored in this apartment. I can't be in cage all day long. Why you keep me in cage? I think I will get married soon." Tommy was right about one thing. He was living in a cage. A self-constructed curtain cage called Tommy Wiseau's life. That said, going out and eating was bound to be better than spending another evening in my bedroom while Tommy alternated between English language mangling and pull-ups. I also knew if I stayed home, I'd be tempted to watch the Golden Globes. And that was only going to remind me of how distressingly far away I was from the life I wanted. We wound up at the Kookaroo on Santa Monica Boulevard, which had recently become Tommy's new favorite restaurant. From the moment we walked in, though, Tommy was off. Everything bugged him. The booths, the decor, the light from outside, the clientele, the small portions. "Is there a shortage here?" he asked. When the server took our orders, Tommy started quizzing him on the chicken. How it was prepared, whether the chickens were clean, how many calories, why it was so expensive. The server walked away when Tommy dared him to find the most delicious piece of chicken they had. At one point, I had found all his goofiness entertaining, or at least tolerable, but now it was embarrassing. After our interminable dinner, we were standing in front of the Beverly Cinemas, trying to figure out what to go see. The talented Mr. Ripley was still playing, and I somehow knew that Tommy was going to suggest we go see it. If he did suggest Ripley, I decided I wasn't going to tell him that I'd seen it a month ago. He'd just complain about not having been invited. Tommy scanned the posters and stopped on Ripley. I was watching his eyes, and the poster just snagged Tommy's attention. Then he turned to me while pointing at the poster. "I want to see this movie." I'd seen several movies with Tommy. He'd always get bored and restless before it was over. Sometimes he got chatty within the first half hour, and other times he fell fast asleep after 10 minutes. Or he'd shout, "Boring!" in the middle of the film. "There's better acting in the Gene Shelton class." When Ripley started, though, Tommy didn't talk. He didn't stir. He was wide-eyed and riveted in the very first scene. For me, it was even better the second time, because now I was watching it through Tommy's eyes. I was trying to decide if he was seeing it the way I had. When the scene of Tom beating Dickie to death came to pass, Tommy actually leaned back and clamped his hand over his mouth. When, at the end of the film, Tommy asked his beguiled, deceived lover, Peter, to tell him something nice about Tom Ripley, moments before strangling him to death, Tommy leaned forward in his seat and sat there with his face cupped in his hands. I kept glancing over at Tommy thinking, what's he feeling right now? What's running through his head? Tom Ripley has to kill Peter, the only person who's ever loved him. Why? Because to get that love, he'd had to lie about who he really was.
New challenger.
For the first time since I'd known him, maybe for the first time in his life, Tommy insisted on staying in his seat through the entire end credits crawl. When the lights came up, Tommy looked devastated. His eyes were wet, his mouth slightly pried open. He had the wrung-out look of a man who'd just come to the end of a long, doomed love affair. The movie had bludgeoned him to within an inch of his emotional life. I didn't think Tommy was a killer like Tom Ripley, but the movie told me that a tortured person can do horrible things for sympathetic reasons. And Tom Ripley was deeply sympathetic. So was Tommy. I felt sad walking out of the theater. I realized that when Tommy had gone haywire in the car a month ago, he had done so to avoid rejection. He decided that to avoid losing someone who potentially understood or accepted him, it was best to get rid of that person preemptively. That way, he could comfortably continue to live his deep and lonely life, consoled by his conviction that others had done him wrong. Tommy and I didn't talk much until after we got into his car. On La Cienega, some limos were cruising alongside us. The Golden Globes had just gotten out. Ripley had been nominated for 5 of them, including Best Actor for Matt Damon's Tom Ripley and Best Supporting Actor for Jude Law's Dickie Greenleaf. We pulled up to a red light. A limo idled next to us. Suddenly, Tommy said, "You know what? I'm not waiting for Hollywood. I can make my own movie." I looked over at him. I knew better than to say anything now. "I can make movie," he said again. "I will make better movie than these fuckers you watch." He sped up and cut off the next limo for emphasis. "I know they don't want me. I know they don't understand me. Guy with accent and long hair. So I show them. I show them what I can do." Tommy had sent out more than 100 headshots since he'd arrived in Los Angeles. did, in other words, exactly what I'd done when I got here. No one had called him back. Not one person. We returned to the apartment. Tommy drew his curtains and sat down at his desk. He was rubbing his forehead, his eyes as intensely focused as a laser beam. I started to head off to my bedroom, but Tommy asked me to stay and talk with him some more. He ran his hands through his hair and slouched over and didn't say anything for a long time. Then he sat up. You know what? Fuck it, man. I will write my own play. I'll do my own project, and it will be better than everybody else. You think this movie we just saw was tragedy? Huh. No, not even close. I will make tragedy. People will see my project, and you know what? They will not sleep for 2 weeks. They will be completely shocked. You watch. I'd seen Tommy angry before, but this was different. For the first time since I'd known him, his anger had a discernible target. He wasn't going to try to please Hollywood anymore. Forget the headshot game, the get an agent game, the audition game, the sell yourself game. He'd make his own rules and create his own project. Ripley had planted a mysterious seed inside him. Excited by his own plan, Tommy stood up and pounded himself on the chest. Listen to me, okay? I'm going to do it all myself. Everything. I'm going to show all these fuckers from Hollywood in their limousines. He started to pace and furiously describe the play or movie. He kept going back and forth about which one his project would be. He wanted to make, all of it coming to him on the fly. So listen, very important information. Are you ready? My movie will have 7 main characters. I will play main character. I call him Johnny. He has this beautiful girl, Blondie. And his best friend, this all-America handsome guy, you will play him. It all takes place in one room, this drama. Everybody is so close, and life is perfect. But then girl, beautiful girl, she betray him. She sleep with his best friend. Everybody hurt and betrayed Johnny. So he become furious. He's fed up with his life, with everybody, and decide to kill himself in front of the entire world. Then everyone will see. People will be shocked. It will be big drama. After my creation, people will not sleep for 2 weeks. You watch. Hollywood want reaction? I give these bastards their reaction. Not until years later did I really understand what Tommy had done, which was to create his own personal version of the 3 main Ripley characters. This meant he mix and matched their characteristics according to his own strange value system, after which he placed them into a warped version of his own life experience. In Tommy's story, the Tom Ripley character is half Lisa and half Mark, while Johnny is half the charismatic Dickie Greenleaf and half the innocent and lonely victim Tom Ripley. It's such a strange interpretation of the story, but it was what Tommy took away from it. Tommy couldn't see what the film was actually trying to tell him about himself. I play the best friend? I asked, still mostly humoring him, never imagining that this scheme would last into the morning.
Fight.
I know the name of your character now, Tommy said, looking at me. You will be called Mark, like this guy, Mark Damon. 13. Leave your stupid comments in your pocket. Sometimes, it's interesting to see just how bad writing can be. This promised to go to the moon. Joe Gillis, Sunset Boulevard. Peter Anway said, all rubbing hands and grinning nervousness, when Tommy arrived on set. Mr. Muir is not happy with us right now, do you understand? He doesn't want to see that rooftop set when he comes in today. Tommy always took the Muir to Anway Information Transit System seriously. Bill Muir, in Tommy's mind, represented the Hollywood establishment he so desperately wanted to be a part of. So right away he gathered his third crew together and announced, "We don't want to upset your bid." Now, instead of filming, our job was to disassemble the rooftop set one piece at a time. This was the morning of the 1-year anniversary of September 11th. While we were ripping apart the rooftop, a plane flew overhead. It was a fighter plane of some sort, low-flying, sleek, vaguely wasp-shaped, and traveling very fast. At the sight of the jet, Tommy stopped everything. "Okay, everybody," he said, "we have meeting inside. Please follow me." We all looked at one another. What now? It was blood-boilingly hot inside Burns and Sawyer's cramped studio space. But once Tommy got us all in there, he asked everyone to please be quiet and remember the American flag. We stood there, doing our best to be quiet. Then someone laughed. Tommy furiously decamped to another part of the studio and returned with a digital timer one of the camera people had been using during filming. Tommy set the timer to 5 minutes